Okay, let's dive into this. When we look back at the grand sweep of human history, it can honestly feel like a massive, chaotic jumble of dates and names. But if you take a step back, a really fascinating narrative starts to emerge. What we're actually looking at in this explainer is the story of accelerating connection. From isolated, wandering bands of early humans all the way to today's instantly interconnected global society, this is the story of us. To make sense of all that human ambition, we're going to break this massive timeline down into 6 totally digestible eras. We'll kick things off at the dawn of civilization, travel through the classical ages and empires, look at global expansion and industry, the world wars and the Cold War, our modern digital age, and finally, we'll look at the patterns of human history that tie the whole shebang together. So let's get into it.
Section 1, The Dawn of Civilization, from Prehistory to 3000 BCE.
All right, let's slow things down a second and just appreciate the sheer massive scale of time this first era represents. For literally tens of thousands of years, early humans were constantly on the move. They emerged in Africa and just gradually spread across the entire globe. I mean, just think about the sheer adaptability required to survive in environments as radically different as scorching deserts, dense forests, and freezing tundra. And they did all of this while living as hunter-gatherers, just moving with the seasons. But then, everything changed. We see the agricultural revolution begin in the Fertile Crescent, leading eventually to 3000 BCE, when Sumer in Mesopotamia officially became the world's first truly urban civilization.
But I want to pause on this staggeringly important date right here. 10,000 BCE. This is the pivotal moment. This is exactly when humans figured out how to domesticate plants and animals. The agricultural revolution permanently altered the entire trajectory of the human species. There was no going back.
Notice the incredible shift here. It's a real night and day difference. On the one side, you've got the hunter-gatherer lifestyle, always moving, completely dictated by whether or not you can find food today. But on the other side, the dawn of agriculture. By settling down permanently, populations just boomed. And because they were suddenly producing surplus food, well, not everyone had to be a farmer anymore. That meant people could specialize. They could become crafters, engage in trade, and establish actual leadership roles. That surplus food is the literal foundation of civilization as we know it.
Section 2, Classical Ages and Empires, from 3000 BCE to 1500 CE. So, this is when those early farming communities really give birth to the first great empires. And watch how this timeline starts to accelerate now. Around 3000 BCE, Mesopotamia and Egypt are absolutely flourishing, building monumental architecture, inventing early writing systems like cuneiform. By 500 BCE, Greek city-states like Athens are over there pioneering early democracy and philosophy. Then we jump to 476 CE with a massive collapse of the Western Roman Empire, and a bit later, the 13th century Mongol conquests, which created the largest contiguous land empire in all of history, stretching all the way from China to Eastern Europe. Human reach was expanding incredibly fast. And you've got to notice the global ripple effect happening simultaneously here. Because while Europe eventually struggled through a pretty fragmented feudal system after Rome fell, golden ages of innovation were happening all over the globe. Like, Rome was laying down laws and engineering that shaped modern Europe, sure, but in India, the Maurya and Gupta empires were pioneering the actual concept of zero, plus advanced astronomy. In China, the Han, Tang, and Song dynasties were totally revolutionizing global tech. We're talking paper, gunpowder, the compass, all while establishing the Silk Road. And the Islamic caliphates? They became the premier centers of learning for the entire world, preserving classical knowledge and advancing medicine in major cities like Baghdad and Cairo that vastly surpassed what was going on in contemporary Europe. Zooming in from the macro to the micro for a second, we also see the rise of incredibly powerful states in sub-Saharan Africa. Take the legendary wealth of the Mali Empire. Their ruler, Mansa Musa, took a pilgrimage to Mecca that was so lavish and he distributed so much gold along the way that he literally crashed regional economies. I mean, his wealth became legendary across the known world. Plus, cities like Timbuktu became renowned centers of learning, while further south, Great Zimbabwe was controlling huge trade networks from these massively impressive stone cities. And as all of this is happening, we absolutely have to shift our focus over to the Americas. This is truly mind-blowing because these societies developed completely in isolation from Afro-Eurasia. The Maya civilization developed highly sophisticated writing, astronomy, and math. The Aztec Empire built a staggeringly powerful, complex state centered on a great city of Tenochtitlan. And the Inca Empire controlled a massive territory along the harsh Andes Mountains, using an incredibly impressive road system. And they pulled all of this off without wheeled transport or a traditional writing system. It's just amazing. Section 3. Global Expansion and Industry, covering 1500 to 1900. Okay, things are going to start moving much faster now. In 1492, Columbus's voyage opens European awareness to the Americas. Fast forward to the 18th century, and the Enlightenment brings this huge wave of reason and individual rights sweeping across Europe. Now, those intellectual and philosophical shifts, they inevitably fueled massive upheavals, like the American and French revolutions. And eventually, this leads to the rapid, aggressive colonization known as the Scramble for Africa in the late 19th century, where European powers basically carved up the continent with very little regard for the people or the boundaries already there. But it's absolutely crucial that we look at the tragic human costs of this expansion. European exploration resulted directly in the violent conquest of the Aztec and Inca empires. And because they had zero immunity, indigenous populations faced catastrophic collapse due to devastating epidemics of European diseases. Simultaneously, one of history's absolute greatest tragedies unfolded as millions of Africans were forcibly transported in the transatlantic slave trade. These unprecedented global trade networks connected the continents, yes, but often through incredibly violent exploitative means. Meanwhile, back in Europe, daily reality was completely transforming. For millennia, human life was anchored strictly to seasonal rhythms and heavy manual labor. But then, boom, the Industrial Revolution hits. Suddenly, we've got steam power. We have mechanized textile production. We have railroads cutting across the landscape. People poured into these rapidly growing cities to work in factories, which completely upended traditional social classes and gave rise to brand new labor movements fighting for workers' rights. The whole rhythm of human life shifted. Section 4. World Wars and the Cold War, from 1900 to 1991. This is a remarkably dense, chaotic century. From 1914 to 1918, World War I introduces the absolute horrors of industrialized warfare, bringing down massive, centuries-old empires. The sheer instability that followed led directly to the Great Depression in 1929, creating this really fertile ground for political extremism. And that erupts into World War II from 1939 to 1945. Following that war, the globe enters the Cold War era, driving rapid, intense technological races, like the 1969 U.S. Apollo 11 moon landing, all the way until the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991. 70 to 85 million. That is the estimated number of lives lost during World War II. It remains the deadliest conflict in human history. This staggering figure includes the horrific tragedy of the Holocaust, representing one of history's darkest chapters. And the war's conclusion ushered in the nuclear age, forever changing how nations interact with one another. Now, from the ashes of that conflict, the world effectively split into two massive ideological blocks. You have the capitalist, democratic West, led by the United States, and on the flip side, the communist East, led by the Soviet Union. For over 4 decades, this bipolar rivalry totally dominated the globe. We're talking intense nuclear arms races, global espionage, and devastating proxy wars in places like Korea and Vietnam. And at the exact same time, a massive wave of decolonization swept across Africa and Asia, completely reshaping the global map while these superpowers competed for influence. Section 5. The Modern Digital Age, from 1991 to the present. So, we are now looking at the direct aftermath of the Cold War. This is the era most of us actually live in, right? And just look at how fast things change now. The 1990s give rise to the internet, entirely revolutionizing how humans communicate. Then, the September 11 attacks in 2001 fundamentally reshaped modern security and international relations through the War on Terror. In 2008, a massive global financial crisis exposes some really deep vulnerabilities in our highly connected economies. And Today, we're navigating the completely unprecedented impacts of artificial intelligence and the looming, critical threat of climate change. These are the contemporary forces defining our lives right now. Accelerating globalization means we're connected in ways our ancestors couldn't even fathom. Geopolitically, China's rapid economic growth is actively challenging long-standing Western dominance. We face brand new digital challenges too, things like privacy, misinformation, and deep social division. And above all, climate change is a defining issue that requires a level of international cooperation we've frankly never seen before. Our technology is entirely new, but the geopolitical tensions and the desperate need for cooperation, those are very, very old. Section 6. Patterns of Human History. Looking back to see forward.
We have just sprinted through tens of thousands of years of human data in this explainer, and when you look at the whole picture, some really clear patterns emerge. Number one, the cyclical rise and fall of empires, from Sumer to Rome to the Soviet Union. Number two, the continuous, unstoppable spread of ideas and technologies across cultures, whether that's agriculture spreading from the Fertile Crescent or the internet blanketing the globe today. And number three, the constant push and pull tension between brilliant global cooperation and devastating conflict. Why this matters is because that farmer in 10,000 BCE and the digital citizen of today, we are part of the exact same continuous human story of ambition, innovation, and resilience.
So, I want to leave you with this one thought. We have thousands of years of human ambition, tragedy, and triumph in our rearview mirror. As we face the challenges of a highly complex, globally interconnected future, what pattern will we choose to repeat?